What part of this, Josh, stands out to you the most?
I don't know. Somebody could find themselves in jail just because they won't bend over backwards to make special accommodations for people.
Yeah, he created them in his likeness, right? He defined them as two separate things. They're defined as sacred. More sacred even than the most unique things in the world. Equipped with intrinsic dignity and worth.
The person that's the farthest from the way that you think, they're cherished by God.
Ooh. And how are you going to treat them? You're going to crap on them. You're going to pile on. Right? Welcome back to another episode of the Life and Faith podcast. Part of this whole mission we have here, is just to share what we've learned, what we are learning, and to guide people into the truth of God's word and how it really does. It permeates everything. There's no situation that's new. There are new faces and new names, but there are no new problems. They're all spiritual problems. I used to have a pastor that said, if sin isn't the problem, then Jesus isn't the answer. I want to read a story from Reuters, something that happened recently. Maybe you've heard of the EEOC, Josh. You ever heard of the EEOC?
The acronym is very familiar. I can't remember what it's from, but I know I've heard it in recent news, I think.
Okay, the EEOC is the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission.
Ah, yes. Okay.
It is a federal agency that was established via the Civil Rights Act in 1964 to administer and enforce civil rights laws against workplace discrimination. So it started for a good reason, right? Starts for a good reason, continues for another?
Yeah. There's a little bit of drift there.
Yeah. April 29th, Reuters posted this story. The U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission on Monday said employers refusing to use transgender workers' preferred pronouns and barring them from using bathrooms that match their gender identity amounts to unlawful workplace harassment and federal anti-discrimination law. So to refuse to use the preferred pronoun is unlawful workplace harassment, according to the EEOC.
And when did they settle on that?
This is like late April.
Oh, wow.
The EEOC updated its enforcement guidance on workplace harassment for the first time in 25 years, including to reflect a U.S. landmark Supreme Court decision ruling that anti-bias laws cover LGBT workers after an earlier attempt stalled during the Trump administration. The commission in the new guidance also addressed the rise of remote work and said that discriminating against employees based on their decisions to have abortions or use contraception is a form of sex discrimination. The guidance is not legally binding, but lays out a blueprint for how the EEOC will enforce anti-bias laws and can be cited in court to back up legal arguments. So I'm not a lawyer. I don't understand how that's not legally binding. I think they're just saying that's the standard they're going to go by. Some Republicans and conservatives and religious groups had criticized the expansive guidance after a commission unveiled a draft version in September. They said it conflicts with state laws on abortion and LGBTQ issues and fails to acknowledge that religious employers are exempt from anti-discrimination laws in many cases. EEOC Chair Charlotte Burrows, in an interview, said that the guidance reflects decades of court rulings and that have expanded workers' rights to be free from workplace harassment, and that updating it was necessary to ensure that employers are aware of their legal obligations. The Democrat-led commission approved the guidance in a 3-2 vote on Friday, with Republican commissioners Andrea Lucas and Keith Sonderling dissenting, a spokesman for the agency said. Lucas, an appointee of Republican former President Donald Trump, said in a statement that the guidance would push many employers to eliminate single-sex bathrooms and facilities and showers and dressing and sleeping and exposing women to increased risk of harassment and assault. Biological sex is real and it matters. Sex is binary and it is immutable, she said. More than one-third of the hundreds of thousands of worker complaints the EEOC received between 2016 and 2023 include allegations of harassment. The agency has recently filed high-profile harassment lawsuits accusing Walmart Inc. of failing to stop severe sexual harassment of female workers by the manager of a West Virginia store, and claiming that Tesla Inc. has for years ignored complaints of rampant harassment of black workers at its flagship Fremont, California assembly plant. Both companies have denied wrongdoing. The Commission had not updated its legal guidance on harassment based on sex, race, and other protected traits since 1999. The agency released proposed changes in January 2017, just as Republican former President Donald Trump was taking office months before the Me Too movement intensified scrutiny of workplace sexual harassment, but they were never finalized under Trump. The lengthy new guidance covers an array of topics related to workplace harassment and reflects significant changes in the law over the last quarter century, such as a 2020 U.S. Supreme Court ruling in Bostock versus Clayton County that said workplace discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity is a form of unlawful sex bias. The Commission said that while Bostock involved a gay worker's termination and not harassment claims, the Supreme Court's reasoning in the decision extends to cases alleging harassment of LGBTQ workers. The Commission in the guidance also detailed how harassment can occur even between remote workers, saying that conduct, quote, within a virtual work environment, such as racist or sexist comments made during a video meeting, can contribute to unlawful, hostile work environment. And conduct that occurs away from work, including workers' posts on their social media pages, can constitute illegal harassment if it affects an employee's working conditions, said the EEOC. What part of this, Josh, stands out to you the most?
Other than catering to, I guess, wokeness here, the trying to legally protect people by, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. Somebody could find themselves in jail just because they won't bend over backwards to make special accommodations for people.
It's pretty wild.
Yeah. I mean, it's getting into the workplace, and we're talking about people's livelihood. You shouldn't have to completely change your views and your beliefs because of the way society has changed in the last 10 years or so, just to be able to keep your job.
Yeah. It sounds like manipulation.
Yeah.
You know, if you have a business and you're building a new one, you're not gonna go to the trouble to make 2 bathrooms when you're just gonna be forced to deal with a problem. You're just gonna make the one. You're just gonna knuckle under.
Yeah. It kind of, to put a little bit of humor into it, into obviously a very serious situation. If you've seen that meme with the guy who, the meme I think is something of the effect of straight to jail.
Straight to jail.
And so it's like you're reading through that, and it's like all these different cases where somebody could get in trouble if they're not making exceptions for these people. Then it's like, you don't do this, straight to jail.
Straight to jail, yeah.
You do that, right to jail.
Well, the way I look at it, is there's as we are sitting in our workplaces, as we are just living our lives and not trying to change the world, and not trying to raise families and chase our passions and that kind of thing, and still be who we want to be without necessarily revolutionizing everything. We kind of have two, as Christians, we have two avenues that we have to look at, right? We have to talk about what we can do for the other people in our lives, right? We have to talk about how we treat other people. And then the second part of that is what we can do actually about this issue. Because there's sort of like the grand thing, the big idea. What do we do about this world situation that's going on? And then the smaller thing, what do we do in the day-to-day with the people around us? Maybe we don't work in Christian environments, or maybe we work in hostile toward Christian environments, things like that. So this is kind of what I wanted to point out. So
I think by hostile, you mean hostile towards Christian.
Right, yeah.
Right, yeah.
Maybe not at your business, but maybe at somebody else's, they they're your boss or
There's
somebody.
definitely a growing hostility towards Christians and traditional values, I would say. Like, you can even take the Christian element out of it, just like what America was built on, which was, like the nuclear family.
Oh, yeah.
And, man, that's in the news today, too, is people jumping all over people. Things that nobody would bat an eye at if it was said 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But now people are saying it publicly, and, you can't say that anymore.
I would like to go back in time and see what, relatively, if it was the case back then, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Smaller on a smaller scale, but still under attack.
Yeah, I don't think you would
overnight.
have quite a global cancelization of people like you have now.
Right,
But
right.
yeah.
What I want to say, every person is created in the image of God. Right? That's Genesis 1.
Mm-hmm.
Not only are they defined as two separate things, man and woman, they're defined as sacred.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't want to get ahead of you here, but I just want to say, Jesus reaffirms this in the New Testament too. Because some people say, well, that's the Old Testament, that's outdated. First of all, it's not outdated. Second of all, it was reaffirmed in the New Testament as well.
Yeah, he created them in his likeness, right?
Mm-hmm.
He defined them as two separate things. They're defined as sacred. More sacred even than the most unique things in the world, equipped with intrinsic dignity and worth. Now, if I gave you, Josh, a picture, a little photo of me and my dad, and I said, Josh, this picture is very valuable to me. It's the only one I have. I'm going to go to jail for a long time. Can you hold on to it? Can you keep it safe for me? How would you value it?
Yeah. Yeah, trying to fulfill that person's wish any way that I could.
You'd treat it like one of a kind.
Right, yep. Can't irreplaceable.
Irreplaceable, right? Low worldly value.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but high personal value.
Yep, because people, that's the value of people. Yep.
Well, that image is born on this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we should see people, regardless of their views on gender identity or their beliefs.
Yeah.
Right? These are these one-of-a-kind things that God entrusts to us to take care of for a time until he comes back to retrieve it.
Yeah. My kid built a bunch of Lego people, and then they just all of a sudden said, you know what, we got it from here. We'll determine how we want to look and how we want to function. And my kid was like, what? No.
We are called to treat all people this way. Matthew 22:37-39, he said to them, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the great and foremost commandment. And the second, you should love all your neighbors as yourself.
Yeah.
Love your neighbor as yourself, right?
Yep. It's more of the value that God has put on us. We value other people because they are precious in his eyes.
In his eyes.
Right.
And that means not just other Christians.
Yep. And all the stuff that people want to get up in arms over, like different minorities, people groups and stuff like that, God loves them all. That's why we should love them too. Now, God loves the people, but there is also things that God hates. But he doesn't hate any people.
Right.
Yeah.
We're called to stand firm in our beliefs and speak truth in love. Okay. And that does not mean saying things rudely and tacking on the word love.
Right. Yep. Talk to somebody like it's somebody else's, like you're saying in that illustration, somebody's most cherished possession. That's all the person that's the farthest from the way that you think, they're cherished by God.
Ooh.
Yeah.
And how are you going to treat them? You're going to crap on them. You're going to pile on, right? Yeah. Okay. We should see those people, the people we have the hardest time loving, as pitiable, right?
Right. Yeah. There's an element of that.
We should treat them like we are side by side to them in the same hospital room. We have accepted the cure and we're getting better by God's grace.
Mm-hmm.
But that person in the bed next to us doesn't need us piling on.
Yeah. Yeah, imagine you're in recovery, right? You're probably like getting close to getting out of there. And somebody gets wheeled in on a bed next to you because there's so many people coming into this hospital because they all have the same thing. And they're like, "What are you in for?" Yeah, sin.
Not so many people, literally all the other people you
Yeah,
see.
all the other people. Yep.
Some of them have accepted the cure,
Yep.
but we are called to look to that neighbor and say, "Brother, I found the cure."
Yeah. Yep.
The cure is patient. The cure is kind. The cure is not jealous. The cure does not brag. It's not arrogant. It doesn't act unbecomingly. It doesn't seek its own. It's not provoked. It doesn't take into account a wrong suffered. It doesn't rejoice in unrighteousness. It doesn't rejoice in unrighteousness, it rejoices with the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things, never fails. That's how we are called to treat each other. So, for those of you that say, "Well, I already do that. I already treat other people with love no matter who they are, no matter where they come from. I'm not a person who gets upset about this." You're treating people with kindness and empathy every day in your life. You're someone who doesn't rock the boat. You treat people how they want to be treated. But maybe you are really alarmed by all this. And maybe you want to make a difference in your community. So how can Christians become more involved civically or politically? Because this is sort of the bigger thing, right? We talked about the day-to-day, treating other people with dignity and respect, even if they're not believers, in the hospital bed next to you, needing a cure. And you say, "Brother, I got the cure."
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I've had it. It works. Yeah.
But maybe you do care about this big thing, and we can't just sit idly by and do nothing. And maybe you're that person who God's put on your heart to say, "Well, I'm not just going to sit by and do nothing.
Yeah.
I'm going to get out there and make changes." You know what I mean? So I got a couple of things we can do to, if you're not maybe so inclined to change the world in one fell swoop, you can do smaller things, right? First thing I want to talk about, educating yourself, right? You can stay informed on the issues, on your candidates, on their policies. You can read reputable news sources. You can go to town hall meetings. You can research platforms. You can take the time to understand the complexities of political issues from the variety of perspectives.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right?
Yep. To be able to communicate well on any issue, you need to understand both sides of it well.
Precisely, yes. You have that opportunity now, especially with information as prevalent as it is.
Yeah.
You can pray for guidance. Begin and end your involvement with prayer.
Mm-hmm.
Seek God's wisdom and His guidance in your decisions and actions, right? Pray for your political representatives, for wisdom in voting, and for reconciliation and unity in our society.
Yeah.
We need that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. The people that frustrate you the most, pray for them.
Who we?
Yeah.
Number 3, you can vote. Exercising your civic duty by voting in local, state, and national elections is paramount. Research your candidates' positions on the issues that align with your values and beliefs, and participate in primaries and general elections to make your voice heard. I contend voting does matter because so many people are lying to your face to get you to vote in one way or another.
Yeah. Man, I wish I would have said this in the last episode. Like, in a sea of things that people are like, what's the point? You know, you should still vote, like Dan is saying, do your duty there. If nothing else, and I shouldn't even say if nothing else, it should be this way no matter how no matter what your theory is on whether your vote actually counts or not or whatever, I understand, first of all, but second of all, you should do it just as unto the Lord. Your vote is cast to the Lord. He sees your vote. He knows what it is. And you're saying, I'm doing this to stand for truth. I'm doing this to oppose what I see to be over here a great evil. And so doing that alone, doesn't matter what happens with your vote, the act of it can be pleasing to the Lord. You can actually be worshipful in going and voting and doing that for the sake of generations to come.
Yeah, Christians, some of them take the political thing higher than the gospel. But in that I don't agree with. But to say that it just throw the baby out with the bathwater, that's
right.
not, you know what I mean? That's not the right thing either. Because I do believe that it matters, because there's so much effort against the truth where that's concerned.
Yeah, put the vote in its proper alignment in your life. It should not be viewed as this colossal thing, and it also shouldn't be viewed as this worthless thing. Put it all in the right priority that God wants it to be in.
Number 4, engage in civil discourse. Engage in respectful and constructive dialogue with others, including those who hold different political views. Key words there: respectful and constructive.
Yeah. It's hard.
Usually
hard
face to face across the table, by the way. Just going to say that point there. Listen actively. And if you don't know what that means, definitely look that up. Listening actively is a big deal, not just waiting to have your turn to speak.
Yeah, I've been in situations before where I've tried to do that, and then I'm waiting all the way through it, and I'm like, I'm gonna see if this person asks me at the end, what do you think? And then I sit there for like 10, 20 minutes, and they're like, well, all right, see you later.
That has happened to me more times than I can really count.
And you're kind of sitting on yourself,
Yeah, well, I had one guy, after I became a Christian, he was letting me know about how terrible Catholics are. And as a new Christian, and really even now, I don't totally understand. I don't understand like the ins and outs of it. You know what I mean? I've never like been to a Catholic mass or anything. And he was just letting me know about all the horrible things. And I remember I was just sitting there like, I'm just waiting for him to ask me what I think so I can say something. But I wasn't really sure what I was going to say. But he literally went on for, no kidding, like 20 minutes. And I just kind of folded my arms and waited. And then when it was all over with, he was like, oh, I got to go, blah, blah, blah. And then I never even responded. I never even said one thing to him. And then another time I was at my wife's work, and this guy was telling me about how he would walk into a church and the roof would just collapse on him and all this stuff. And he was going on about how terrible he is and how he doesn't deserve the Lord and stuff. And I was just kind of like, yeah, I'm at my wife's work, and I'm not really here to like stir it up, even though like I could, and then he kind of was in the middle of talking, and somebody else came in, and they started talking about something completely unrelated, and that train went off into another direction, and
never came
I
back.
I never even got it. But that's the Lord working in that, right? Because he's like, if I'm me first, then I'm trying to be heard, then I'm going to stop him in the middle of that and say, what about this, buddy? And da-da-da-da-da. And now he knows that he can talk to me.
Yep.
Hopefully, he would have picked that up.
There's a very true principle that is my response is my responsibility. So that's hard. Now I'm kind of hinting at the times where you do get a chance to present your side of it. So you got to take responsibility for what you say in that moment. But sometimes that responsibility is just to say, you know what? The Holy Spirit's leading me this way. I don't think I need to say anything in this moment. Maybe we'll have this conversation again sometime that will present itself more, but I think all I need to do in this moment is listen. And that's hard, but that's a whole prayer in of itself.
Well, I like those moments because it reminds me that I'm doing the right thing. Because if there was something here for him to have me say, it would be like through a bullhorn. You know, I would not be able to contain it.
Yeah.
And if I sit here quietly and I wait, then when the opportunity arises, I believe that he'll provide those words like he did for Aaron. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When that moment comes, he'll give me the right words. If that moment never comes, I'm still doing the right thing by just chilling.
Right.
I'm just sitting here waiting to have the right thing. I do that even in productive conversations, ones that aren't arguing or whatever. Sometimes it is just like when I have to say something here, he'll give me what to say.
Right.
And then I can just sit quietly, and it's so much more.
And when you
so much freedom in that.
When you force it, that's when you put your foot in your mouth or something like that. What we're talking about here, it can be summed up really well by Proverbs 25:11. It says, "A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold and pictures of silver."
Oh, that's good.
And people are sometimes like, "What does that mean?" I don't know exactly what it means if I could put it into your mind, but that just sounds nice to me. Like apples of gold and pictures of silver, that's just aesthetically pleasing to me. It goes on to say, "As an earring of gold and an ornament of fine gold, so is a wise reprover." So there is a time to reprove somebody wisely, but you have to say it in the right way. The truth, like Dan said, it needs to be spoken in love. You already presented that fact, but it also has to be presented in the right timing, and I think that's essentially what you're covering right now.
You speak with respect and constructiveness, right? You listen actively, and you do respond when it's appropriate to quote, to as this, I don't know why I said quote. You listen actively, and you seek common ground. You have common ground.
Yeah, with everybody.
Believe it or not. I mean, it might be harder to dig out.
Yep.
But it's there.
Have you, some people might think this is kind of crass for me to say, but there's somebody
Those are the things I say.
There's there's a comedian that wrote a book, and it's actually a printed book, and I can't remember who it was at the moment, but the book is called Everybody Poops. And I think the heart of that book was just like, we can find common ground with everybody.
It all comes down to that.
There's some lady listening to this right now, and, oh, my lands.
Oh, my
can't
lands.
believe he said that. But it's true.
Horse feathers.
It may be something you don't want to hear people talk about regularly, but hey, if nothing else, we all have those basic human needs.
Yeah.
We all eat, right? Maybe that's a little bit more clean.
And more to this particular issue. Maybe you might find that we see the same problem. We just choose to react to it differently.
Yep.
And
typically the reaction comes from somebody who's near and dear to us, close to us, that we're taking up offense for in that moment. So, yeah.
Listen actively, seek common ground, and avoid personal attacks and hostility. Just avoid it. Personal attacks and hostility get you nowhere. Remember that healthy debate and dialogue can lead to greater understanding and cooperation. And these issues and many issues in your life, right? Healthy debate and dialogue. Because that's what we're talking about with civil discourse. It's like we don't really have a healthy way of communicating the truth of the word because it's a complex issue and you really need to know it really well. And there's so much working against us in our personal lives, in our day-to-day, to keep us from the word. There's so many, like, I heard this quote today. This guy said, "The world is too much with us. Getting and spending, we lay waste our powers." Right? We're so busy, like, getting, spending.
That sounds like another verse I just read recently where it's like, I think it's in James, where it says, like, we will buy and sell and get gain today, and it goes on to say, what is our life but a vapor?
Yeah, we'll spend so much time worrying about things that don't matter. Yeah. Tom Petty wrote, "Most things I worry about never happen anyway."
I like that quote, yeah.
And it's like, there are more important things. So we can find these common ground places, right? And it can lead to a greater understanding and cooperation, right? Number 5, support your causes, right? Support your political causes. Get involved with political causes and organizations that align with your values and beliefs. Volunteer for campaigns, participate in grassroots organization efforts, support advocacy groups that promote issues that are important to you. This is a way that you can be involved, but not necessarily, you can be part of the solution, right? I donate to Right to Life. There are different organizations that have been good and then ones that stunk over the year, that you find out, this is kind of a waste of time or whatever. It's hard to find unity even on your side of the political fence, but it's like, that's a way you can be involved, right? You can be involved with certain candidates if you get to know them and you find ones you like. You can support them and be involved in their candidacies.
Yeah.
You can contact your representatives.
Yeah, most people don't utilize that, but that's super important.
You can reach out to your officials at the local, state, and national levels and express your opinions on issues and policy matters. You can write letters, make phone calls, attend town hall meetings, engage directly with your representatives, and advocate for change, especially at the local level.
Yeah, and that's where, if I can get a little political here, I'll try not to get super political.
Well, it's not to get political, right? We're just talking about how you can affect these things. If you see this thing as a big thing that you can't control, here's how you might be able to control it at your.
Yeah. What I'm getting at is, I think many times, from my point of view, maybe other people would say otherwise, the left is a lot more proactive in those measures of letting their voice be heard, and the right has a tendency to just kind of hang back and say, I'm not going to bother nobody, nobody's going to bother me, and we think we've lost a lot of the ground with that mindset, and we need to have the same kind of proactive approach to letting our voice be heard, like Dan was just outlining.
Yeah. It takes a lot more effort than what we're putting in now. We're going to start now for 10 years from now kind of thing.
Right. Yep.
You know what I mean? It's like, start now because this wheel does not turn very fast.
Right. Yep.
You know, it's a big world and it takes a lot to move it. Number 7, run for office.
Yeah.
Okay, that's an idea.
Underrated idea,
yeah. Consider running for political office at a local, state, or national level if you feel called to public service. But be willing to step forward as a candidate who represents your community and speaks to enact positive change. What little involvement I've had with this, I will tell you, is a little like reading bills from Congress and trying to understand them is probably 50% of what you do. Intentionally complicated, but it can be done.
Right. Yep.
Okay. But what we need, or what people need, and when I say we, I mean society, like all people, like good and people. I'd say good and bad, but like people that agree with you and people that don't. We all need.
Yeah, both sides.
Our genuine representation.
Right.
You could argue that people who are genuine don't get elected, and that may be true, but that can only change if we change it, right?
Yeah. There's probably, for every 10 people that are not genuine, there's only like one genuine person running, so it's a minority thing. There needs to be more people.
I have seen people who I disagree with that I thought were genuine.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard this quote often from a pastor, a friend of mine. He would say, there's a lot of very sincere people in the world. Some are sincerely wrong, but they're sincere nonetheless.
I like those people more than the ones that are,
Right. I'd much rather deal with a sincere person, somebody that can be reasoned with, versus somebody who's just like, nope, I know this isn't the right way, but this is my way, and this is what makes money. I'm just going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Number 8, support civic engagement in your community. Encourage other people in your church and in your community to be more politically engaged by hosting educational forums, voter registration drives, or candidate forums. Foster a culture of civic participation and responsibility within your sphere of influence.
Right. Yeah, some people say, well, I can't do that at church because there's separation of church and state. I could get on the soapbox here, but I'll just say this. Separation of church and state is more about keeping the state out of the church. And that's what his original intention was for. And you can absolutely have these kind of discussions at church. And you should. There's not... Imagine telling Jesus, okay, you can start this church, but there's certain topics you can't talk about in this church that you're starting.
Yeah.
You know, how dare one of us tell Jesus that?
Well, if you're the person who's sitting in your pew every week and you're listening to the message and you see the world and you're alarmed by the world,
mm-hmm.
as many of us are. I mean, when you and I were alarmed by the world, we started a podcast.
Right. Yep.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You could do that too, but what I'm saying is another idea. And again, these are just ideas. These are just meant to get your mind working, not things to say that. I'm definitely not saying all Christians should do this. I'm saying here's a hopper of ideas when I think about what can a person do on the grand level, because we always talk about and at least us on this podcast, we talk about treating people nicely a lot. We should do it. We should do it more. We don't do it enough, yada, yada, yada. But what better way to affect change than encouraging the people around you in your church, encouraging like-minded individuals to be involved, right?
Yeah. Everything you're talking about with involvement here, it reminds me of a quote that it's commonly attributed to Edmund Burke, but I see some discrepancies here. So anyway, who said it's not necessarily important? The quote is, "The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing." We can't sit back. We got to do some. And I'm not saying do X, Y, and Z. I'm saying pray about it. Ask what the Lord is leading you to do, and don't be afraid to do what He's called you to do.
It's very true. Last one, stay engaged beyond elections. Remain actively involved in political issues and advocacy efforts beyond election seasons. Stay informed about ongoing legislative debates, policy developments, and community initiatives, and continue to advocate for positive change in your community and your society. That's a tough one because you do get bombarded with all the election stuff, and then you're like, when it's over, you're like, I just don't want to think about this again for another 4 years,
Yep.
And generally you don't.
Yeah.
Sometimes it may feel like this stuff does nothing to fight the cause, but when you act in this way, you become the change that you want to see.
Yeah. That's good.
You do the kind act, you remain faithful amid hard times, and you represent Christ well in the eyes of one non-believer, letting your light shine before men that they may glorify the Father who is in heaven, and you quite literally make the world a better place.
Thank you for listening to the Life and Faith podcast. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing, leaving a review on your favorite platform, and sharing it with friends and family. Your support helps us continue spreading the gospel of faith, hope, and love. Connect with us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and many others to stay updated on our latest episodes. See the link in the show notes for all our social media channels. And until next time, it is our hope you'll commit yourself to an even deeper life in faith.